For many people, buying and owning a home can feel like an unachievable goal, especially in Ireland.
However, it is not impossible.
Even if buying a house is currently inaccessible to you, it is still good to get a sense of what you would need to do for when you are ready to buy a house.
So in this video, we're going to give you a step-by-step guide of how to go about buying a house in Ireland. As always, you can use the timestamps that we left below to jump to a particular section that you're interested in.
And at the time of recording, and by means of disclosure, I have gone through the process of buying a house, whereas Steve has not yet.
Let's get it.
Step 1, start saving and get advice. Before you even start thinking about buying a house, you'll need to start saving some money. Even if you already have a deposit, you'll need to have a savings record in order to prove to banks that you can repay a mortgage. Lenders will look at a thing called affordability, but more on that shortly. In short, start saving and do it as early as possible. Before you get your mortgage, we highly recommend that you go to a financial advisor or a mortgage broker as early as possible to get tailored advice for your situation. We'll talk more about this later on, but essentially it is free to get a consultation and they'll be able to steer you in the right direction very early on.
Step 2, build your knowledge of housing and property. This may seem obvious, but what exactly do we mean by that? It's not just as simple as knowing the difference between, say, an apartment and a house. You also need to understand various details such as floor space, BER ratings, heating systems, etc. Of course, a lot of this information is freely available online, but do remember that you can also leverage your existing situation either by looking around your own home or talking to friends, family, any landlords you might know. It's all really valuable sources of information. In addition, you also need to know what you want in a property. Are you going to need a parking space? Do you want a lot of green areas near your home? A gym, supermarkets, takeaways? All these things are really important to consider before purchasing a property. Another great tip is to go view a property both during the daytime and the nighttime, as you'd be surprised how this different experience can be. Remember, location is nearly always touted as the top criteria when purchasing a property, as of course once you buy a property, it's not going to move. This list isn't exhaustive, but of course it's important just to think about what you value and make sure to find that. In short, just make sure to set your expectations realistically. You may want a swimming pool, but you may need to settle for the bath for the moment.
Step 3, get finance. So now you're a guru in the property market and you understand exactly what you want. You'll need some way to pay for this. So, how can you get finance to buy a house? Well, number 1, you could buy with cash. Perhaps you're very lucky and just have a pile of cash lying around, or you received an inheritance, or you sold a previous house, or you invest in Bitcoin at the right time. Either way, you can buy a house outright and save the hassle of dealing with any of the banks. Obviously, this is not the case for most people, especially first-time buyers, but it is possible and it's an option for some people. Secondly, you can buy a house with a mortgage. For the majority of buyers, and especially first-time buyers, you'll need a mortgage to buy a house. A mortgage is basically a long-term loan that you get from a bank with a specific purpose of purchasing a house. We could do a whole video on the mortgage process, but for the purpose of this video, we're just going to go into a few quick need-to-knows. Sally is single, she's a first-time buyer, she has an annual income of €40,000, and she has no current debt. She pays €500 in rent per month. She's able to live quite frugally and saves €500 per month. And also, she has €25,000 in savings and communion money. She wants to buy a 2-bed house for €150,000. We'll use Sally as an example to illustrate some of the points. So, the first thing that you'll need is a deposit for a mortgage. For first-time buyers who plan to live in the property, you'll need a minimum of 10% of the value of the property. For subsequent primary dwelling mortgages, you'll need 20%, and for all other properties, such as an investment property, you'll need a 30% deposit. In Sally's case, for a property of €150,000, she'll need a minimum 10% deposit as a first-time buyer, and this is €15,000. Generally, and at the time of recording in Ireland, you can get a maximum of 3.5 times your annual gross salary for a mortgage. There is a little bit of scope for flexibility and to get more than this money, but we're not going to go into that right now. Rather, you can go to a mortgage broker or financial advisor to figure out your situation. So again, in Sally's case, she can get 3.5 times her annual salary, which, as we said before, was €40,000. So she can get a maximum of €140,000 of a mortgage. But given that Sally wants a property for €150,000, she'll need to pay a minimum of 10% deposit, i.e. €15,000. So in this case, the bank would be able to give her a mortgage of €135,000, which is €150,000 minus the 10% deposit, which is €15,000. With €25,000 in savings, this would give Sally a total of €160,000 to put towards buying the property and any other incidentals. Banks will also look at affordability, and this is basically the amount of money that you can put towards your mortgage repayments after all your living expenses are taken care of. Your mortgage repayments will be dependent on the term of your loan, so this could be 25 years, 30 years, or 35 years. The longer the loan, the smaller the repayments, but the more interest you pay in total. The shorter the loan, the higher the repayments, but the less interest you pay in total. In order to get to this affordability number, the bank will basically look at things like rent payments, regular savings, so it's important that you have an actual paper trail of these things. What we mean by this is that the bank can see from your bank statement, for example, the money going out towards rent or towards savings. So, for example, if you're paying rent in cash, it's going to be very hard for the bank to justify that you're actually spending that money and that money is going towards rent. So, if we go back to our example, Sally has rent of €500 per month and she has savings of €500 per month. So she basically would have €1,000 of affordability to put towards a mortgage. Another thing to note is that you'll likely need mortgage protection insurance to take out a mortgage, and this is basically to pay the mortgage back in the event of a death. It may seem obvious, but you want the lowest interest rate possible. The lower the interest rate, the lower the repayments, the lower the cost of funds. Some banks offer cashback offers on mortgages, so make sure to take this into account when you consider the cost of finance. In Sally's case, if she got a 3% interest rate for a 30-year mortgage on €135,000, her monthly repayments would be €569 and a total interest of €69,900 over the course of the mortgage. If this was 3.5%, however, over 30 years, this would be a monthly repayment of €606 and a total interest of €83,236. There is a Help to Buy scheme from the Irish government, which helps first-time buyers get a deposit needed for a first house. It is effectively a tax rebate up to the value of €30,000, and it is based on the previous tax that you've paid in the past 4 years. So you may not get the full €30,000, but you can get up to that. One thing to note is that this is only for new builds. As we said at the start, we would highly recommend going through a mortgage broker in order to get mortgage approval. You can go directly to banks, but mortgage brokers are experts and they'll be able to get the best deal for your situation. In most cases, the mortgage brokers get a commission from the bank themselves, so you don't actually have to pay them anything. And the commission rate that they get from the banks is regulated, so it's the exact same that they would get from every bank. So it's not in their incentive to recommend one bank over the other. It's in their incentive to get you the best deal. Usually, you should be able to get mortgage approval in principle fairly quickly. This approval in principle is basically the bank telling you how much they're willing to lend you and acts as proof of finance for a lot of estate agents as you go to view houses. You will need to finalise a lot of details as you draw down the mortgage, but more on that later. It is highly recommended that you reassess your mortgage every couple of years so you ensure that you have the best interest rate available. There are different rules on when you can change your mortgage. However, some people do it as frequently as every 1 to 2 years. Some estate agents won't even let you view a property unless you have mortgage approval in principle. This is to ensure that you're not wasting their time and they're not wasting your time. Another way to get finance is to actually buy with other people. So, who could you buy with? For most people, this will be your partner. For those of you in your late 20s, you may have seen this plenty of times in your Instagram feed. And for those not in your late 20s, prepare for the worst. The obvious benefit here is that you have more purchasing power with 2 incomes and 2 sets of savings. The main issue will just be agreeing on the decor of the house. You could also get help from your family to buy the house. So this could take the form of a loan or a gift. For loans, you can basically get a sum of money from your mom or your dad, and this is charged at 0% interest if they're nice to you. For some lucky people, you could also get gifted some money from some family. There is an annual exemption on gifts. Basically, someone can give you €3,000 every year and you don't have to pay any tax on that. There are lifetime exemptions that you can get on gifts from certain people depending on the relationship. We're not going to go into these exemption thresholds right now, but we'll leave a link in the description which explains them all. Finally, you could also purchase with friends. This has become more of a trend recently as people are realising that sometimes it's cheaper to actually have a mortgage than to pay rent. The biggest risk here is, can you commit to a mortgage with your friends for such a long period of time? What happens when you have to sell, or what happens when one of you move abroad? Banks tend to prefer to lend to couples over friends as they see it as a more secure relationship. And as we all know, who's ever heard of a relationship that's broken off? One important thing to note is that the money that you can get is not necessarily the amount of money that you should be willing to spend on a house. For example, with Sally, she technically was able to get a mortgage of €140,000, but she only wanted a property to the value of €150,000, so she only needed to get a mortgage of €135,000. Understanding and defining how much you are willing to spend on a house will better prepare you for when you go into negotiations. Another important thing to note is the price that you're willing to pay can and should differ by house. Not all houses are born equal. It's important to also have a bit of cash spare after the purchase of the house to pay for a few things which we're about to go through now. These costs will include stamp duty, legal fees, surveyor fees, engineer fees, moving costs, and furniture and fittings. Stamp duty, you have to pay 1% for houses up to the value of 1 million and 2% for all value above 1 million. Legal fees could cost you anywhere between 2.5k and 5k and anywhere above. A surveyor may cost you €200, which is sometimes obligatory with a mortgage, and an engineer could cost you between €300 and €500. Moving costs and furniture and fittings are basically unique to the buyer, so do your research here. And lastly, don't forget the bottles of champagne, and make sure to include a glass for me and Steve.
Before you crack open the champagne, you're going to have to find that house. Once you know what you want and how much money you have to spend on a home, you can actually get house hunting. It's generally recommended to find a solicitor before you go house hunting, as once you actually find a house that you like and make an offer, you will get asked for your solicitor's details, so this will save you a bit of hassle when that time comes. It's really important not to get carried away with one specific property or get emotionally attached to any properties you find. And just remember, there's always going to be someone out there who is probably wealthier than you and who can outbid you on a property. There's no guarantee that you can purchase a property at any price, let alone the asking price. And once you realise that this is the case, you'll be able to make better decisions based on logic as opposed to emotion. In Ireland, houses can be sold through private treaty, public auction, or through an estate agent. The majority of houses in Ireland, though, are usually sold through estate agents. The easiest way to start looking at properties is to go on daft.ie or myhome.ie. Both are very simple to use, and you can apply whatever filters you want, contact the estate agent, or attend in-person or virtual viewings. It is of course highly recommended to try and view a property in person, as a video can only tell you so much and you might feel a lot differently when you see it in person. Although virtual viewings have become a lot more common due to COVID-19 and the way they've communicated have got a lot better, if you can go in person, do try and do so. Once your hunt's complete and you found that dream house, now's the time to make your offer.
Step 5. Make an offer and get sale agreed. To submit an offer, you can usually do it by writing, i.e. via email, to the estate agent, and they will then check with the seller to see if the offer is acceptable or not. The process for making offers and getting sale agreed in Ireland can be quite frustrating. Ultimately, you're making offers through the estate agent, whose ultimate goal is to make as much money as possible for their client, and also for themselves. This is where bidding wars may start, which is the dream for both the estate agent and the seller. To emphasize, the estate agent's interest, i.e. getting the highest price possible for their client, is completely against your interest, i.e. getting the lowest price possible for yourself. So getting into a bidding war for them is great, because then they can use bidders against each other to raise the price of the property. There are plenty of theories and strategies on how best to negotiate a house price, and you can simply Google these. But the main ones that we recommend are: stick to the price that you're willing to pay for and don't go above. Do not get emotional or angered in a bidding war. Use specific numbers when coming to your final offer. For example, €195,000 doesn't sound as much like a last offer as €194,650 does. And we don't want to tarnish them all with the same brush, but just generally don't trust your estate agent. The one thing you can leverage to your benefit is the speed at which you can close a sale. The house hunting process is a long one, and many sellers just want to release funds to go towards something else as quickly as possible. For example, they may be wanting to move into a new house themselves, so it's important for them to have a quicker sale rather than to get an extra €2,000 on their house price. So again, it is important to show that you have the finance in place and that you have your mortgage approval in principle, so you can move quickly on the sale. Once your offer is accepted, congratulations, your sale agreed. However, there is still work to do. You will next need to pay a booking deposit to your estate agent. It's at this point that the estate agent becomes your best friend, as the negotiating is over and they want to get the sale done as quickly as possible. Booking deposits can vary. They're usually somewhere between €5,000 and €10,000, but ultimately they'll be less than your overall 10% deposit if you're a first-time buyer. It's important to note that this deposit is refundable up until you sign the contracts. When you pay the booking deposit, generally the house is taken off the market.
Step 6. Finalise the sale. Your solicitor and the seller's solicitor will work through the finer details and the legal aspects of the sale and give you a final closing date, i.e. the day that you get your keys. As mentioned previously, it is also really important to get a surveyor out to look at the property that you're looking to buy, as they will be able to pick out any issues with the house and potentially even leverage that knowledge to get you a cheaper price if they notice that certain aspects of the house need some work. For example, if they notice that there's a job needs to be done on the house that's worth approximately €5,000, you could leverage this knowledge and potentially get a €5,000 discount on the property. On the other side of that coin, however, do you want to run the risk of losing this property for the sake of €5,000? Who knows? It's at this stage of the process that you'll need to get a property valuation done, and this is to allow the bank actually let you draw down your mortgage. In addition, you'll also need to organise home insurance protection and mortgage protection at this stage. Once all these conditions have been met, the lender, probably your bank, will then be able to send you an offer letter which will detail everything that has been outlined so far. You may want to avoid looking at the total interest section at the end of this document, as it'll probably hurt.
And still does.
Once you've received this letter of offer, it's a big moment. Once you've signed, there's no turning back. You actually can still pull out of the process up until this point, but once you have signed those documents, that's it. Once you've taken that step and the documents are signed, you'll need to arrange a payment to the solicitor for the rest of the deposit, stamp duty, registration fees, and the solicitor's fees. You may also have to pay some of the local property tax depending on the timing.
Step 7. Get your keys and pop the champagne. Once the balance of funds have been transferred to the seller by the agreed closing date and time, the estate agent will call you and explain that everything is in order and ready to go. The property is officially yours now.
Go get those keys and drink that champagne.
We understand how daunting a task it is to buy a home, so we hope this video has helped you to understand the various steps involved in getting there.
As always, if you have any questions or comments about the topics covered in the video, let us know below.
And if you like the video, please make sure to like it, and otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.